Hey guys, Madame Ram, starring Toni Collette, tells the dramatized true story of Georgia Frontier, a former entertainer turned owner and heavy hitter in the boys' club that is the NFL. After her husband's mysterious death, she shocks everyone by inheriting the LA Rams and taking the reins of a major sports franchise. Relying on her wit and astrological charts to make decisions, she turns the NFL on its head and to this day remains one of the most beloved, despised, and controversial figures in modern sports. You guys, I started listening to this and I am absolutely hooked. The twists and turns, I didn't see any of them coming, and I have so many questions. I cannot wait to continue to tune in. The woman who went from singer to NFL owner, defying expectations and shaking up the world of professional football. Madame Ram dives into her relentless quest for respect, power, and a championship trophy. This isn't your typical sports story. Follow Georgia Frontier as she navigates a male-dominated industry using star charts and sheer determination to make her mark in history. Whether you love football, powerful struggles, or just a good scandal, Madame Ram has it all. Ambition, mystery, and the unforgettable legacy of a woman who refused to stay on the sidelines. Madame Ram, the woman who took on a man's world and won. Follow Madame Ram on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Mad True Crime, where we get big mad over true crime. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and today you'll be hearing part 2 of the disappearance of Ryan Shtuka. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. In last week's episode, we got to know Ryan and went through the day leading up to, the day of, and the days following his disappearance. There was no shortage of volunteers willing to drop everything to help, and no shortage of rumors spreading like wildfire. Police had done everything they felt they could at the time, which left Ryan's family heading up the continued efforts. Ryan's family is incredible with a tenacity that's unmatched, but as much as they searched, there was no trace of Ryan anywhere. At the end of last week's episode, I told you about a text that changed the course of the searches, so let's dive into exactly what that text was and what it might mean. The Sun Peaks News reports that in April of 2019, Heather Shtuka was made aware of a text that was sent from someone at the party the night that kind of might change everything. Initial reports stated that Ryan was last seen around 2 a.m., but maybe the partygoers just lost track of time. Heather told the Nighttime podcast that one of the 4 people left at the party after Ryan supposedly left texted Chandler's girlfriend a selfie at 1:36 or 1:37 a.m. I've seen both. And the text said, "We're coming to party at your house," or something along those lines. This is important because Ryan wasn't in that picture. This would indicate that Ryan likely left the house prior to 1:36 or 1:37. A tip had come in about a potential sighting of Ryan at 1:55 a.m., but it was initially brushed off because it was in the opposite direction he would have taken to get home, and it was believed that Ryan was still at the house at that point. Initial reports had also erroneously stated that he was 5'6" and 150 pounds, so the witness didn't think it was him. It wasn't until after his height was changed and the description of Ryan's clothes matched up that he realized that this sighting might have been important. When the news of the text came in, this sighting got even more potentially viable because in order for the girl who sent it to say that she was coming to Ryan and his roommate's house, they'd have to have already have left, right? So this backs the timeline up quite a bit. The potential sighting of Ryan also changed the direction of the searches. Most of the searches on Burfield had been focused on the routes Ryan could have taken home. However, the possible sighting was in the opposite direction near the intersection of Fairways Drive and Eagle Court. The residential half of Sun Peaks is set up kind of like a small, long neighborhood. To get to that intersection, you'd walk out of the house and head east instead of west. You'd essentially continue east as far as you could, a mile or so, until you hit the last intersection before hitting the main road. I mapped out how long it would take to walk that far, and it comes out to about 21 minutes, give or take uncontrollable variables. The text was sent around 1:36 or 1:37, so if you add on 20 minutes, you get 1:57 or 1:58. That's just 2 to 3 minutes off of when this man thought he might have seen Ryan. It was adding up whether it was just a coincidence or truly a solid lead. Sun Peaks News reports that Heather went straight to the intersection and searched and dug through the snow, hoping to find any trace of her son, but none was found. It was now time to ask why Ryan might have been walking that way, and the only logical explanation seemed to be that maybe he was walking back towards the village to grab something to eat. There was a place called Mountain High Pizza who took orders until 2 a.m., so maybe Ryan was walking there? Honestly, no one really knows. Ryan had a vehicle in Sun Peaks, so you'd think he'd just take the short walk home and drive there in his car, but really anything is possible at this point. The week of April 16th was the end of the winter season for Sun Peaks Resort. While most people were packing up to go home and end their vacations, Ryan's family and countless volunteers were using shovels and excavators to sift through the snow around the fairway's intersection. Ryan should have been heading back home to work with his father on the 18th, but instead, his father was searching from sunup to sundown every single day, refusing to leave without his son. The snow was continuing to melt, so the searches were getting fully revamped, and plans were made for KSR, Kamloops Search and Rescue, to bring their cadaver dogs out. April turned into May, and there was still no sign of Ryan. On the 11th, news broke of a possible development. Sun Peaks News reported that a humanitarian ping was done on Ryan's cell phone, and law enforcement was able to determine that it last pinged at 3 a.m. on the day he disappeared. Its location was Sun Peaks. A humanitarian ping isn't a term we often hear in the US, but from what I can gather, it's a last-ditch effort to try and gather any evidence possible. We don't know if the ping was done early on or if it wasn't done until May, but if it did take a couple of months, I tried to think about why that might be. It took me a minute, but if I had to guess, the holdup when it comes to probable cause or getting a warrant for the ping might have been the lack of probable cause. As of yet, there's no sign that a crime occurred, and Ryan wasn't dependent on any medications that would have put his health in danger. A police department is going to have to argue why they need to be able to override someone's privacy to get information, and 3 months of no contact, cell phone, or banking activity may have been enough. But again, this ping definitely could have been done sooner, and the media just didn't find out about it until later. The ping registering at 3 a.m. is important. Ryan had his cell phone on him that night but didn't use it. Had he gotten lost, he could have used his cell phone to call for help, but he didn't. Ryan's cell phone pinged more than an hour after he was last seen, but still in the area he disappeared from, so where was it and where was he? Some have suggested that if Ryan got lost, he may have fallen into a tree well and was unable to get help. I personally had no idea what a tree well was, and frankly, it's terrifying. In snowy places like Sun Peaks, they have these big, tall trees that look like Christmas trees. Think of any ski resort you've ever been to or seen a picture of. You've seen those Christmas trees a million times, but as it turns out, you're only seeing like half of that tree. When the snow melts, it's twice the size, and the bottom half is a bare trunk. It's like finding out that owls really have long, skinny legs. But anyways, a tree well happens when the snow rolls in and starts accumulating. The branches on the top half of the tree shield the ground below it from accumulating snow. There then becomes this snowless cylinder around the bottom half of the tree that gets covered once the snow accumulates to the top branches. Skiers sometimes fall into these holes and have a really hard time getting out. The snow is soft and fluffy because nothing has been compacting it, which makes it really hard to get any bearings to try and get yourself out. Once someone falls into it, it can also disturb the snow on the outside, causing it to cave into the tree well, covering the person or skier with snow. As you can imagine, that's not anything that any mother wants to think about. Was it possible that Ryan had fallen into a tree well and couldn't get out? If he did, why didn't he use his phone? It was working for at least an hour after he was last seen, so it wasn't too severely damaged. I should note here that locals have given their input on the possibility of Ryan falling into a tree well, and they honestly don't really find it very likely. In order to get to a point where that would be possible, they think Ryan would have had to have walked way too far off the beaten path. Ryan was wearing cloth Vans, which are not suitable for trudging through snow. He wouldn't have gotten very far before the cold was painful and the snow was really deep. He couldn't have gone anywhere fast because he would have had to have put a lot of effort into each step, 1 foot into deep snow after the other. Every possible option so far feels less possible the more that you think about it. That's what's so frustrating about this case. The snow was melting in Sun Peaks pretty quickly now, and there was a lot of it. Remember, it gets an average of 18 feet per year, and by the time the resort shut down for the spring and summer, you could finally see the ground and the creeks were overflowing. When Ryan first went missing, searchers were having to bring special gear just to walk on the snow and carry a pole to poke down towards the ground. They also carried shovels to get to anything below them. Looking at the pictures from May, it honestly looked like they were searching a completely different place. A lot of people had made insensitive comments about Heather insisting on continuing these searches, but she was right when she told CFJC Today that no area is officially cleared until you can see the ground when you're searching. Searchers took to the once unavailable trails and searched the woods for absolutely any sign of Ryan at all. While that was going on, there was a lot of talk about the mounds of snow on the sides of the roads that had been built up due to clearing. As hard as it is to even say this, people did wonder if maybe Ryan had somehow gone unnoticed and would be found in one of the mounds, and that was a pretty big concern for a lot of locals. I was able to find a few discussions online from them, and they said that unlike in the US where we just let it melt, some places in Canada actually have the mounds removed and taken to a snow dump. According to CBC, the body of a woman named Taya Sinclair was found in one in 2022. One local said that the searchers did try using water jets to try and speed up the melting process, but even still, no sign of Ryan was found anywhere. The last weekend of May 2018 came with a lot of renewed hope. Sun Peaks News reports that a group of 25 KSAR searchers and a canine team and a helicopter and all the rest headed out to Sun Peaks for a massive coverall search. The KSAR manager told the station that he and his searchers are emotionally invested in Ryan's case, and they'd actually had to bring in a critical incident stress management counselor to help those involved. He was and has been in complete awe of the sheer amount of people willing to show up day in and day out for Ryan and his family. As much as I would like to say that they found anything that could help them find Ryan, it just didn't happen. When May turned to June, Heather and Scott had no choice but to go home. They had 2 daughters in Alberta and they needed their parents. Ryan's sisters had a high school graduation and a birthday coming up. Heather told the Sun Peaks News that it was so hard to think about leaving, but said, "I think Ryan will understand." As for what it's going to be like when she gets home, she said that she thinks it's going to be like a piece is missing, that they haven't been able to process any grief because they just don't know anything, adding, "When we came out, it was the worst thing that had ever happened, but it's not. There's more we have to go through before this is all over." A part of her felt like she was leaving her son behind, but it was an impossible situation for any parent to try and navigate. On June 7th, Heather took to Facebook to do a low-key Q&A to some questions she gets pretty regularly. When asked why she thinks Ryan is still in Sun Peaks, she said that there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. That includes the work done by the RCMP and the PI that they personally hired. When discussing any possible triggers or vices that might make Ryan want to run off, she said that he honestly didn't have any of them. Between the friends he had had all of his life and the friends he had made in Sun Peaks, they all said the same thing. He was the same Ryan they all knew and loved who had no drug or alcohol problems. Nor did he have any of the other risk factors you'd want to take into consideration. One of Ryan's co-workers actually told CBC, "He just seemed like a really good guy, really genuine and confident. Everyone liked him up there. He never made any enemies." While witnesses had reported to Heather that Ryan did drink that night and may have done MDMA, that all kind of runs with the whole party vibe that was going on and not Ryan having any kind of crisis. There was certainly nothing negatively affecting his relationships or work, and nobody remembered any trouble that he might be in. June 9th of 2018 was a pretty big day. It was the day that KSAR paused that search for Ryan. According to Kelowna Capital News, plenty of clothes, credit cards, cell phones, and keys had been found during their searches, but not one of them ever belonged to Ryan. The KSAR manager told the station, "To me, it seems obvious he didn't walk home and get lost or fall asleep in a snowbank. It kind of feels like something else happened. Who knows what that was? And maybe he did walk up one of those ski runs. Maybe he was despondent. That's a possibility. Maybe he went to another friend's place. Maybe he went for a walk somewhere else. There was a theory that he went for pizza in the village." The KSAR manager honestly seems as lost on what to think as anyone else, and he's the guy that's been heading the official search effort. And frankly, the likelihood of Ryan making it to a ski run and then walking up it seems so unlikely for reasons that we have already discussed. Despite the disappointing news, Heather took to Facebook to share her gratitude for everyone. Castanet quotes her as saying, "Without all of you, none of this would be possible. Each of you have shown that love is not limited by blood, that you can make a difference. You have proven that an investment in others far and wide yields great dividends. That is the legacy I want for my son, for all of my children." And she's absolutely right. It's times like these where you realize that people really can be incredible. I have never, ever seen a search effort like the one for Ryan, and Heather has been adamant that every family of a missing person deserves the response that she has gotten. The June search had been paused, but later in July, the Salmon Arm Observer reported that law enforcement had sent in dive teams to examine the creeks. The superintendent told the outlet that Ryan's case is like a puzzle. Heather spoke to the Observer as well, saying, "There's no leads, and that's always been the frustrating part, that there's no evidence to suggest he left Sun Peaks at all. There's no tips, no gossip, nothing that would lead us into a different direction." Throughout the summer, the searches continued, with the Shtuka family traveling to Sun Peaks every month. In October, a new canine search was done, and volunteers plastered the village with new flyers so that the new wave of tourists would know what to be on the lookout for. In November, Heather told CFJC Today, "December 1st will be a year since the last I saw him when he left to come to Sun Peaks. You know, the big hug and kiss goodbye," adding, "You come up here for a certain culture, snowboard and ski, and enjoy like-minded people, but Ryan's face should serve as a reminder to be aware, whatever that means. We're not sure why Ryan went missing, where he went missing, how he went missing, so there's no message we can give to people concretely and say, if you don't do this, you don't have to worry. My message to people in general is to just be aware." November did come with an interesting development, and it's hard to really know what to do with it. CBC reported that a guy named Jim, who they say lived near where Ryan stayed, heard an unusual altercation outside on the night of Ryan's disappearance. He claimed to have heard an angry man yelling, "Get in the car, get in the fucking car." Jim said that he told this to police and they called him back several times, but hadn't heard back since. I'm not even sure what that means, but it's definitely new information. And I mean new because that was the first Ryan's parents had ever heard of it, and they said that Jim doesn't live as close to Ryan as you might think, saying it was actually 20 minutes in the opposite direction of the party house. However, with that, I do have to wonder if that's by car or by foot, because by foot, that seems like it might be near that intersection where the witness thinks that they might have seen Ryan at 1:55, though we only have limited information, and from what I've seen, it doesn't look like Heather puts much stock into this report at all. The CBC article was a bit of a strange gut punch, and it just kept going. It went on to say that a retired RCMP Mountie of 25 years helped in the searches for Ryan at the request of a family friend. That guy told the outlet that he initially believed that Ryan had wandered into the snow and got lost, but changed his mind after interviewing a friend. The former Mountie told CBC, "The friend seemed to be very nervous and very afraid for himself, which was unusual to me. He said his gut was telling him that this was most likely a homicide. However, investigators still don't have any reason to believe that foul play was involved. To be fair, though, to believe foul play was involved, you have to have evidence of it. Law enforcement can only go on facts and evidence, and the problem with Ryan's case is that there just isn't any evidence to go on." Ryan's mom spoke to CBC as well and said that she doesn't see this as a likely scenario because Ryan wasn't a confrontational guy. He wasn't the kind of guy who'd go out and start fights, and she can't imagine a scenario where Ryan got involved with something that turned into a violent altercation. February 17th of 2019 marked 1 year since Ryan's disappearance. The Sun Peaks Resort planned a run for Ryan and a vigil was held. His family took the day to celebrate Ryan and thank the more than 1,000 people who've helped them search for their son. There was a press conference and several articles released marking the significance of the date, and it was hard not to notice the constant use of the phrase, "someone knows something." It was so prevalent that it was definitely worth mentioning. Heather told the Salmon Arm Observer, "We didn't go up just as grieving parents because we're not. We have this ambiguous loss, so we can't quite hope and we can't quite grieve. We're in this netherland, and there's no way of knowing when that will ever change for us. For anyone who believes in dreams, and I am certainly raising my hands, Heather told Castanet that she had had a dream about Ryan that morning, stating, "I held him tight, afraid to let go, breathing in his smell, feeling his arms wrap around me, hearing him tell me how much he missed me as his tears and mine fell, and then he was gone." I'm gonna try and keep my shit together right now, but I did want to say that I heard a psychic once say that just because it's a dream does not mean it's not real, and I believe that in my soul. The searches were still pretty regular, but not as large scale as before, but the entire winter season of 2019 came and went with no sign of Ryan. Heather knew she needed to do something to make sure that no one forgot to keep looking for him, so she did something that is one of the coolest things I have ever seen. She and a woman named Claudia had green toy dinosaurs printed and attached a brief summary of Ryan's case and a QR code for more information to the dino's neck. They were called Shtukasauruses and took 8 hours to print, but people from all over the world could order them and were encouraged to leave them anywhere they pleased. As of November 2023, more than 5,000 of these dinosaurs have been shipped across the globe, and it's actually caused Ryan's case to go somewhat viral. Someone found one a few years later, and the video of it sparked all new interest in Ryan's case. Around this time, several documentaries were released about Ryan's case, and some of them, like Peaks and Valleys, The Search for Ryan Shtuka, even made their way to Canadian film festivals. The more people learned about Ryan's case, the more people offered their assistance, which included a man named Ryan Hillaby. He specialized in drone mapping and, according to CJFC Today, used technology that searches an area for a specific color. The technology was developed by a man named Shane Michaels with Wings of Mercy, and they plan to spend 7 days mapping with the drone, trying to find any trace of Ryan's burgundy hat. Ryan Hillaby did everything that he possibly could to help in any way, but as hard as he tried, he came up empty. October of 2019 was the last opportunity for a large-scale search before conditions started to change again. According to a local, 30 people showed up to help, but again, nothing was found. The entire winter came and went, and it felt like they were no closer to finding Ryan than the day he was reported missing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now boarding Group A. Please have your boarding passes ready to scan. If your phone is cracked, old, or was chewed up by your Chihuahua travel companion, please refrain from holding up the line. Instead, go to Verizon and trade in any phone in any condition from one of their top brands for the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus with Galaxy AI and a watch and tab on any plan. Only on Verizon.
With new line on my plan. Service plan required for watch and tab. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
In May of 2020, COVID was starting to make changes to everyone's daily lives, so the ability to organize in groups was obviously hindered. That being said, a local did say that remains had been found by people walking and hiking during the lockdown, but none of them were Ryan. In August, Heather posted that another team had searched from Fairways Drive all the way down to a hostel in the village, and while she appreciated the effort more than anyone knew, she hadn't gotten her hopes up because the area had already been pretty thoroughly searched. They did not find Ryan, but they did find something that had clearly traveled to get there. Again, this had nothing to do with Ryan, and we don't know what those items were, but it sounds like the shock was more so about how far away from a location an item can travel, maybe indicating that their search radius should be expanded. Summer turned to fall and fall turned to winter, and just like that, it was February of 2021. Ryan had officially been missing for 3 years, and there were still no answers. Come May, Castanet reports that police searched Sun Peaks again, and the way it was worded sounded like they were looking for information just as much as they were looking on the ground. According to CFJC Today, this search was going to be different because they were conducting it as if they knew nothing at all. Ryan could be anywhere, so they were going to search everywhere. Heather told the outlet their family was managing their expectations, but couldn't say enough great things about the RCMP's drive and determination. In the end, nothing was found, and according to Heather's interview with CJFC, all theories fall into two buckets. Either someone knows something or no one knows anything. The RCMP told CBC, "We don't know where he is or what happened to him, and that's just as unsettling for us as the RCMP as it is for the community." Locals told the station that Ryan's disappearance has shaped their lives. They're always on alert, and they always know where their friends are. CBC noted that one member of KSAR actually trains their dog in the area of Ryan's disappearance on the off chance that the dog finds something while training. That man told the outlet, "I feel almost guilty that we can't find Ryan, can't bring closure. I really do feel one day somebody's going to come forward and say something." February of 2022 came fast and marked 4 years of Ryan missing. Sun Peaks Resort honored him as they always do, and candles were lit across the world in his honor. The following month, Global News reports that a human bone was found near a walking trail in Kamloops, and while I never saw an update on who that bone belonged to, it did not belong to Ryan. In May, a family friend named Indigo Johnson wrote a children's book about Ryan, and it's absolutely precious. It's called The Kindness Quilt and goes through the story of a little green dinosaur that goes missing and the friendly creatures that come together to find him. That book is available online, so definitely check it out. In June of 2022, Heather and the family of a missing 32-year-old woman named Shannon White came together to organize a joint search effort. According to CJFC Today, Shannon had last been seen on November 1st of 2021 when she was leaving for work. The search for her had been called off after a month, leaving them in the same boat the Shtukas had been left in. More than 20 volunteers came out along with 3 canines, and they scoured the area of a nearby creek until no stone was left unturned. They searched in the creek, along the creek, and even in log jams, but unfortunately, no sign of Shannon or Ryan was found. To this day, Shannon White is still missing, and you can find out more information about her case on the Facebook group Missing Shannon White. People were searching for her as recently as January 17th of 2024. In November of 2022, Heather released a book called Missing From Me. It's a book about what it's like to be the mother of a missing child and everything that comes with it. That honestly doesn't even begin to do her book justice, so let me read you one of the reviews. User Anna wrote, "In Missing From Me, Heather Shtuka gives us a very personal and raw account of the days before, during, and after her son, Ryan Shtuka, disappeared. Adding, what follows could be a guide for any family who finds themselves in a position of becoming a missing persons advocate. We see firsthand her evolution from mother to search and rescue leader to advocate and media relations pro, and of course, always putting her role as a mother first. If you want an example of an author who put their heart on a page from cover to cover, it's Heather Shtuka. A great read for anyone processing grief, going through tragedy, or missing a loved one, or who wants a story about the strength of the human spirit." It goes without saying here that Heather is an absolute, hands-down, knockdown, drag-out, relentless advocate for her son and the families of so many other missing persons. If you are looking for a book to read, please add this to your list. I would love to be able to tell you that there have been major developments in Ryan's case, but there just haven't been. The searches do continue and no one has forgotten his name, but there are still so few answers and an endless list of possibilities. Ryan's family continues to search and fight for their son, who on February 17th of this year will have been missing for 6 years. If you have any information about the disappearance of Ryan Shtuka, please contact Kamloops RMCP at 1-250-828-3000. You can also submit a tip to ryanshtuka.com, and if you'd like to remain anonymous, you can contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477 or visit their website at kamloopscrimestoppers.ca. Just a refresher, Ryan was last seen between 1 and 2 a.m. on February 17th, 2018 at a house party on Burfield Drive in Sun Peaks, British Columbia. He was wearing a white shirt with gray sleeves, a blue coat, dark jeans, a burgundy baseball-type hat with tan lace-up bands. He also had his iPhone with him, a black iPhone 6, his wallet, and his car keys, which would have had a Volkswagen key on it. If you're going to be visiting the Sun Peaks area this year, please be on the lookout and check out Ryan's Facebook page, Missing Ryan Shtuka, to see if there are any searches you can participate in. For photos pertaining to this case, check out Ryan's highlight at the top of my Instagram profile at the Heather Ashley, and join me there today at noon Eastern, where you go live with me and talk about today's case and all other true crime cases on your mind. If you love the podcast, feel free to leave a review. It makes my day every single time. And if you have a case you'd like to hear covered, share with Big Mad True Crime on social media, because all cases are covered by listener request. I'll be bringing you a brand new case next week, and I cannot wait. But until then, we out. All right, guys, we are officially at the end of this episode, which means that it is time to read a review that made my entire day. This one is from Anxiety Doesn't Define Me. No, it doesn't, Queen or King. It says, this podcast was recommended by Derek on Detective Perspective, and I'm so glad he did. I love that there's no small talk and she gets right to the case. Thanks, Derek. I love you, and I love hearing where everybody comes from. Derek is amazing. For anybody who doesn't know, Derek has Detective Perspective solo, and he also has Crime Weekly with Stephanie Harlow. We love Stephanie too. Separately, they are both awesome, the kind of people you can fart around. And together, separately, there's no going wrong with them. They do in-depth, multi-part episodes of different cases, a lot of them that you've probably heard of, but never gotten a deep dive like the ones that they do. So yeah, definitely check them out if you haven't. We have a ton of crossover from Crime Weekly and Big Mad True Crime because they're one of us, you guys. They're one of us. But back to the point. You're amazing, and thank you for being so nice, and thank you for coming here from Detective Perspective. I appreciate you. You're the best. I love you guys so much. And you didn't have to do anything nice, but you did, and that's awesome and amazing, and it made my day, and I love you so much. Thank you. You guys are the best. All right, guys, if you have gotten this far, it means that it's time for the hot take, and this one's tough because there's so much and still so little when it comes to Ryan's case. I want to make it make sense. So I have been through every single process I can think of, and it's tough because if you go online, all of the people who kind of started following this at the very beginning really focus on the party, but I can't imagine a scenario where the party fits. I mean, people came and went after. Nobody seems strange. I mean, they were like, oh, we're coming to party at your house. I mean, if everybody, I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. And when you see Heather talk about her son in this case and do interviews, she seems really, I don't want to say, it's not the word confident because I don't want it to come off as like flippant or arrogant. So I don't want to use the word confident, maybe at peace with the idea that the party's not involved in this. She doesn't seem to outwardly suspect anyone who hung out with him that night. I think it's just hard to figure out, if not that, then what? And I don't think we can really bank on the party being involved when there's no evidence to suggest that it was. I mean, obviously, we all go back to the last place a person was seen, and we frankly just do not know that he ever left that house. That was the last confirmed sighting. We don't know of anyone who saw him outside of that house afterward. I remember hearing, when I was doing research, I heard one person say that RCMP thought it was really strange that there was no footprints leading away from the house, but I couldn't see that confirmed anywhere. And frankly, by the time the police were called, it was the next night. And so almost 24 hours, like not quite, but it was maybe 18 or something. Like we're into the next night, right? It's dark again. And snow had been falling the entire time. I get that snow prints can stay in place for a bit, but also people would have been walking in and out of that house all night long. So to say that there were no footprints seems unlikely. There probably was a crap ton. And to say that his weren't there, it might be pretty hard to figure out which would have been his, unless you're like matching up the van's treads. But then they're all going to kind of mush together. I can't find a place where that's real or backed up or why it would be true, because by the time police got there, it would have been a shit ton of new snow since the previous day. I don't know. And you think about snow melting, but snow melts slowly. It's not like a dam gets released and it rushes. And so while things do travel when they're missing, it's hard to imagine that, because I'm trying to think like, okay, If he was in the snow and the snow melted, you'll find him. That was everyone's consensus. Everybody's going to find him when the snow melts, but that's not what happened. And so you're thinking, okay, water moves things. The riverbanks were flooded or the creek beds were flooded, but snow melts slowly. It is a lot. That is a lot of precipitation that's kind of catching up with the earth. But it doesn't melt like a river. So everything would have been damp. It would have been wet, but it wouldn't have been rushing from these mounds and this accumulation that has built up over time. Snow will move things, but is it going to move his body just because it's water? I don't think so. But also, I don't know. I'm unqualified to have this opinion. Absolutely. Obviously, I've looked into over 200 cases, and this one is really unique. There's a full and complete lack of evidence. There's just nothing to go on. And I can't imagine being in Heather's position, and she has handled it better than I can't even put into words how she, I would say, could write a book on how to be just so proactive and so determined and so willing to share to her comfortability. And she is incredible. She literally did write the book on it. She has a strength that should be studied. And she's so well-spoken and so personable when she's having these interviews, and in a way that is respecting and honoring her son and also being realistic and painfully so at times. And she's giving a lot of grace to law enforcement where it can be hard to do that. When no one's looking for your son or you feel like no one's looking for your son, she gives them the grace of saying, hey, they did this really well. They searched really hard at this point in time. Then we did have to do it ourselves and we were lost and that needs to change. But we do appreciate the work that they did. And I mean, Scott, his dad, his mom has been in the media a lot. You hear her quoted all the time, but that's Scott day in, day out. This man took his own I think it was an excavator. It could have been, oh man, it was like a tractor. Oh, he took his own equipment out there to move snow, looking for his son. I don't think anybody can imagine the pain. And so, yeah, Heather has talked about that before. She's talked about, we didn't think about what happens when we find him. What happens if his sister finds him? What happens if I find him? What happens if Scott finds him? And that was something that they didn't think about until after it had started. Those are the things that you do have to consider when looking for a missing person. And I mean, there are just so many things that we as true crime consumers can learn when we cover these cases and we listen to these cases, because we have to have this level of empathy. True crime is full of people who have humongous hearts and they want to advocate, they want to learn, and we have to make sure that we're always doing that. And there is so much to learn from people who are willing to share their feelings and their stories and their tips. And we can learn about these searches and what made them great, what could have been done different. Heather talks about what she learned along the way. Moving to grid searches, things like that. We know that if you find evidence, you don't touch it, you don't pick it up, you stand there, you call for help, you stay there until help arrives. We can learn so much. And Heather has been an absolute rock for her family and for Ryan. And it hurts my soul to be talking about this and not being able to say that they found him. But this is one of those cases that has been requested so many times, and I absolutely understand why. If you guys get a minute today, I do want to hear what you think. So head over either to the Facebook group or on social media for Big Mad or on my personal Instagram. Either way, I want to hear what you guys think. What are some perspectives you guys have after hearing all of the facts of the case and knowing that he hasn't been found yet? What do you think? And obviously, keep it healthy and keep it constructive. I know that his mom has had to deal with an overt amount of pretty terrible theories she's had to read from people who confidently express them as if they were fact. So you guys are the best, and I don't expect you guys to do that. So yeah, so reach out. I want to hear what you guys think. This is a case that's going to stick with me forever. And obviously, if any updates come, you guys are going to be the first to know. So I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.